This might just be the most iconic mountain on the entire planet. At 3,776 meters, it is Japan's highest peak. It's a national park and a UNESCO World Heritage Site. The mountain is mentioned in Japan's oldest stories, poems, and haikus, and has been depicted thousands of times in Japanese art. Both Shinto and Buddhism consider it a sacred home of the gods, and for nearly 1,000 years, observers have made pilgrimages to the summit. They've built temples and shrines, and marked the first climbing routes. Today, more than 300,000 people follow these routes to the summit each year, while millions more visit the mountain's lower slopes. Fuji is a volcano. It's erupted about 180 times in the last 5,600 years, averaging once every few decades. For the last 319 years, Fuji has been quiet. The cities in its shadow haven't. Tokyo has grown into one of the largest cities in the entire world, more than 30 million people. The edge of the city is just 50 kilometers from the volcano. These are hazard maps, showing how far lava bombs, pyroclastic flows, and volcanic mud flows could reach. This one is the scariest, showing how far away ash could fall. We'll look at these in more detail later on. Fuji is just one of more than 100 volcanoes in Japan. Volcanoes are usually found along tectonic plate boundaries, and this is the intersection of 6 different plates. This is one of the most environmentally hazardous places on the planet. Japan has some of the world's biggest earthquakes and tsunamis. Monsoons and typhoons cause flash floods and mudslides in the mountains. And yet, more than 120 million people live here. Check out this graph of disaster-related fatalities in Japan, with 2 huge earthquakes in 1995 and 2011. Notice how at the start, there's consistently thousands of fatalities a year, and then around 1960, that drops to just a couple hundred. Japan has led the world in figuring out how to mitigate disasters. Typhoons, floods, earthquakes, tsunamis, and even volcanic eruptions. I want to talk about what Fuji's next eruption could mean for Tokyo, but I also want to introduce you to volcanoes that are even larger and much more active. One is erupting currently. Every single one has people living concerningly close. We'll learn about how people manage to live right in their shadows, and perhaps more importantly, why.
Check this out. This is Aso. This is Japan's largest volcano and one of its most active. On top of the crater rim here, there's all these little concrete shelters, so you can, I guess, hide out so a lava bomb or something doesn't fall on you. What's nuts about Aso is that it's not just that steaming cauldron over the edge of this crater. It's this whole area. These distant mountains back here, that's the edge of the caldera. One of the country's most active volcanoes, very scary looking at the top, but still has thousands of people living within the crater. But that's Japan. I have quite a few volcanoes to show you here, and this is just the first of 3 videos from Japan. This was a big trip. It took an entire month to film everything. Spending a month abroad is quite expensive, including phone service. In the past, I've just used roaming data for like $10 a day, which adds up really quickly. So I am very excited about the sponsor of today's video, Saily. Saily is an eSIM service. Just download the app, find the right plan for your trip, use the code Aidin at checkout for $3 off, and now you can stay connected to the internet while you're traveling. There's no need to go find a SIM card or pay crazy roaming fees. My total is $9.34 for 30 days, less than 1 day of roaming data would have been.
They have plans available for more than 200 destinations, almost anywhere in the world. And if you're visiting multiple countries, you can get a regional or global plan. They even offer an ultra plan with unlimited data and some extra travel perks like airport lounge access, fast track services, and online security tools. Saeli is compatible with all iOS and Android devices, so you can use the QR code on screen to sign up and use the code Aidin for a $3 credit. You can also share that code with friends and family to stack up more credits for your future trips. It's thanks to sponsors like Saeli that big trips like this are even remotely doable. So thank you again to Saeli for making this trip and this video possible, and just providing a service that makes traveling smoother and more affordable.
Fuji is obviously Japan's most iconic mountain, that perfect cone shape. But if you look at it from the right angle, you'll notice there's this big bite, just this chomp, taken right out of the side of the mountain.
October 28th, 1707. A magnitude 8.6 earthquake strikes Japan, generating a tsunami that kills over 5,000 people. At the start of December, smaller earthquakes are felt around Fuji. On December 16th, a cloud of ash rises 20 kilometers above the summit, and pumice falls from the sky. By the end of the day, falling lava bombs have burned temples and villages on the volcano's slopes.
I'm inside of the chomp.
The eruption lasted 16 days and released about 800 million cubic meters of ash, the worst ashfall disaster in Japan's history. About 1 million people lived in what is now Tokyo. Nearly 4 centimeters of ash and debris fell across the city, blocking out the sun and causing respiratory illness. Some parts of the city received as much as 15 centimeters, accumulating on rooftops and eventually caving them in. Farms near the volcano were buried under as much as 3 meters of ash. Crops failed, and a decade of famine followed. During heavy rains, ash washed into rivers, forming volcanic mud flows, fast-moving walls of ash and debris, destroying farms and villages in their path. Because the eruption left behind so much ash, mud flows continued for nearly 200 years, and in the worst affected areas, farmland is still unusable today. The eruption came out of Fuji's south flank rather than its summit, forming this crater. Volcanic eruptions almost always begin with earthquakes, and the earthquakes are almost always caused by the volcano. Fuji's 1707 eruption is a very rare case where geologists believe the earthquake actually caused the eruption, essentially plugging the magma chamber and allowing pressure to build. In 1707, Japan was almost completely isolated from the rest of the world. Sailing into the open ocean, or even building a ship capable of doing so, was banned, but small boats were often swept out to sea by storms or ocean currents. Some returned with reports of a large white column rising from the sea, a small island absolutely crawling with white birds. Fuji is the product of the Pacific Plate sliding beneath the Philippine Plate. Follow that plate boundary into the ocean and you'll find a chain of volcanic islands. MIYAJI is one of Japan's most active volcanoes, erupting once every 20 or so years. In 1983, lava flows destroyed forests and villages. And in 2000, a large crater formed at the summit and began emitting dangerous amounts of sulfur dioxide. The entire island was evacuated, and residents couldn't return until 2005. Today, those on the island are required to carry gas masks in case the volcano's sulfur emissions spike. In the mid-1800s, Japan's isolation ended. Explorers began sailing to distant islands, including Torishima, a small volcanic island 500 kilometers south of Tokyo and the most important breeding ground for the short-tailed albatross. In 1887, a Japanese businessman founded the Tamaoki Company to harvest feathers from Torishima, and by 1900, 300 people lived in a company town on the island. Workers hunted more than 100 birds a day, and by 1902, more than 500 million had been killed. That same year, the volcano erupted, burying the town and all of its inhabitants. Tamaoki himself was away, so he returned and rebuilt the town and the business the next year. In 1922, with albatross populations too low to sustain the business, the company closed. And in 1933, with fewer than 100 left, hunting was banned. Eruptions in 1939 and 1941 once again buried much of the island under lava. In November of 1791, a swarm of earthquakes was felt in the coastal town of Shimabara at the foot of the Unzen volcano in southern Japan. In January, a column of ash rose from the summit, and in February, lava began flowing down its slopes. On May 21st, a large section of the mountain collapsed. The resulting landslide swept much of Shimabara into the bay, creating a tsunami that hit the city across the water. 15,000 people were killed in Japan's deadliest volcanic eruption on record. The debris from the landslide can be seen today. It added about 4 square kilometers to the coast and dozens of small islands. In 1989, earthquakes were once again recorded near Shimabara. An unstable lava dome grew at the summit, reaching more than 120 meters tall. Pieces of the dome broke off, sending pyroclastic flows down the volcano's slopes. Fast-moving avalanches of extremely hot ash, gas, and debris. On June 23rd, an unusually large pyroclastic flow killed 43 people, most of them scientists and news reporters, including Katja and Maurice Kraft, the world's most famous volcanologists at the time, and probably still today. Over the next several years, more than 9,000 pyroclastic flows reached further down the volcano's slopes, blocking roads and destroying homes.
This is a school right at the base of the volcano here that was burned by pyroclastic flows. It's been left in its mostly original state, hasn't really been cleaned up.
Sakurajima is widely considered Japan's most active volcano. Look at it on a map. You'll see this big island rising right out of Kagoshima Bay. Several craters at the summit, river channels running down its slopes, and villages on the island, home to more than 4,000 people. Just 4 kilometers across the bay, you'll see Kagoshima City, home to more than 600,000. January 12th, 1914. Sakurajima erupts. Pyroclastic flows bury 3 villages, and a magnitude 7 earthquake kills 35 people in Kagoshima City. Over the next few weeks, lava flows bury 5 more villages, and one connects the island to the mainland. By the time the eruption ends, half of the more than 20,000 people living on the volcano have left for good. Smaller eruptions happened in 1939 and 1946, and in 1955, Sakurajima began erupting almost non-stop. In 1985, 474 eruptions were recorded at the summit. In 2009, activity increased again, reaching nearly 1,000 eruptions a year. Most eruptions look similar. An explosion at the summit sends ash into the sky, which then rains down onto the volcano's slopes. If the explosion is big enough or the wind is blowing west, the ash falls in Kagoshima City. 18 river channels flow down the mountain slopes and into the ocean, averaging a 20% grade, really steep. Japan is rainy, especially here in the south, and during heavy rains, all of that ash is washed into these channels, forming mud flows. As the volcano became increasingly active, mud flows became larger and more frequent, damaging or destroying homes, hotels, highways, and bridges. In the 1940s, the local government began building flood control dams on Sakurajima's rivers. Let's say you have a section of river 100 meters long that drops 20 meters, a 20% grade. Add a 10-meter drop in the middle, and now each of these sections has a 10% grade, slowing down mud flows. This was effective, but it was expensive, and construction wasn't happening fast enough. In 1974, mud flows killed 9 people. 8 of them were construction workers building flood control dams on the mountain slopes. Kagoshima needed a lot more dams on Sakurajima, and they needed them built more safely. So, people pressured Japan's national government, and in 1976, construction began on the world's most ambitious volcano control project.
I've found my way into the mud flow channel. Here's the volcano back here, and here's the dam. You can see it's got these big teeth that'll catch big boulders and keep them from moving down and destroying stuff downstream.
Flood control dams have been installed on all 18 of Sakurajima's rivers. Sensors are installed along the river's upper reaches. Some are like tripwires. A mud flow breaks the wire, and workers downstream are alerted and evacuated. Others are like pendulums, activated when a mud flow flips them up. Mud flows are also monitored using surveillance cameras and LiDAR sensors, which can estimate the size of debris flows. Machine learning is used to analyze the results and identify patterns. In 2009, a remote control helicopter was developed, used to take measurements, gather ash samples, and install monitoring equipment close to the craters. Along the base of the volcano, you'll find 32 concrete shelters. Inside each of the shelters, they have this kind of hazard map. It shows you where you are, what your risks are, and gives you a little flow chart showing you how to evacuate. Along the water's edge are 20 evacuation ports for evacuees to gather, and 20 ferries ready to take them to the city. The city has about 100 ash sweepers to clean the streets after large eruptions, sort of like snowplows. Most cities provide residents with trash cans, maybe recycling bins. In Kagoshima, you also get these yellow bags to collect ash and deposit it at one of more than 6,000 collection sites throughout the city. Many of the houses near the volcano have roofs, windowsills, and gutters that are designed to prevent ash from accumulating. not too different from like an A-frame cabin designed for snow. The city distributes pamphlets and instructional videos to residents and requires schools to teach students about volcano safety, sometimes including visits from volcanologists and field trips to the volcano. The Sakurajima Volcanic Prevention Council meets every 2 months. It includes the city government, the prefectural government and weather observatory, the regional development bureau, and university research centers. Experts from Kagoshima are familiar faces at national and international volcano conferences, sharing their system with the rest of the world. This system isn't just allowing a large city to function next to an erupting volcano. It's preparing for a worst-case scenario. Large eruptions, like the one in 1914, happen at least every few centuries. And an eruption that size could drop up to a meter of ash in Kagoshima City, cutting off water and electricity. After World War II, Japan's infrastructure was left weakened, and repeated major disasters killed thousands each year. The beginning of the 1960s saw a push to rebuild with disasters in mind. New legislation building codes were passed, and billions of dollars were invested. They built flood control projects all across the country, developed the world's best earthquake-resistant architecture, coordinated new warning systems, and implemented an annual disaster prevention day to share information and practice evacuations. Building hundreds of dams throughout Japan has had an environmental cost, one that we'll talk about in more detail in the next video. This area, southern Kyushu, is one of Japan's richest regions for archaeology, thanks largely to its frequent volcanic eruptions. A big eruption drops a clean layer of ash that's easy to spot in an excavation. Ash layers are easy to date and can often be distinguished from ash from other eruptions. So if an archaeological site is sandwiched between two ash layers, we can infer its age. Big eruptions also drop ash over large areas, really helpful for synchronizing the age of sites across an entire region. The most famous site in this region is the Uenohara site, a large village buried under ash from an eruption of Sakurajima about 9,500 years ago. With artifacts dating back over 10,000 years, it is one of Japan's first villages, capturing the start of a transition from hunting and gathering to sedentary life. In 2024, researchers from Kobe University published an insane paper. They found a layer of volcanic debris covering the seafloor around the Kikai caldera, a massive underwater volcano south of Kyushu. They were able to determine the debris' age, around 7,300 years, and the size of the eruption that made it, between 332 and 457 cubic kilometers, the largest eruption of the last 10,000 years. The eruption sent pyroclastic flows 80 kilometers across the ocean and into southern Kyushu, and dropped ash on most of Japan. Right above that ash layer, the number of villages here nosedives. The villages then gradually return with a new style of pottery, hinting at a culture changed by the volcano. Evidence of the eruption changing Japan's society has been found as much as 800 kilometers away, preserved beneath the exact same layer of ash. After Unzen's eruption, the lava dome was still unstable, and mud flows continued. So a series of dams and channels was built. To build in such hazardous terrain, they designed unmanned construction vehicles that could be controlled remotely. Unmanned construction has spread throughout Japan. It's being used to build similar infrastructure on other active volcanoes, and allowing cities to more quickly and safely rebuild following natural disasters of all varieties. Japan's volcanic islands are an incredible biological resource, allowing scientists to study how life evolves in isolation. Some species are only found on individual islands or island chains. Numerous birds are only found in the Izu Islands, and despite its frequent eruptions, MIYAJI provides one of their best habitats. Torishima sits right in the path of incoming typhoons, so a weather observatory was built in 1947. In 1951, the meteorologists found something: a small group of short-tailed albatross. They began working to save the species, quickly joined by biologists and conservationists. And by the 1970s, the population was slowly growing. By the 2000s, over 1,000 birds were living on the island, and researchers could begin introducing them to other islands nearby, mitigating the risk of extinction when Torishima erupts again. The most recent eruption was in 2002, thankfully minor. Even on the mainland, Japan's volcanoes act as biological islands.
Not only is Aso here Japan's largest volcano, it also supports one of its only natural grasslands. This is a very rare ecosystem here in Japan, and also just a really beautiful one.
Volcanoes are one of many factors that have made Japan environmentally singular. The country is home to hundreds of endemic species of all varieties, some only found on individual mountains. In the next video, we'll visit a sacred dormant volcano that provides some of the best habitat for one of Japan's most unique endemic animals. Volcanoes provide water, with the abundant meltwater from Fuji supporting thousands of farms on its lower slopes. And rich volcanic soil has created much of Japan's best farmland. Japan has more than 13,000 hot springs, or onsens, heated by the same forces that drive the volcanoes, with some in use for more than 1,000 years. In some parts of Japan, geothermal plants provide renewable energy and power entire cities, and Japan has barely tapped into their potential geothermal resources. And of course, in a country where art, folklore, and spirituality are inseparable from the mountains, the cultural value of volcanoes is immeasurable. In 2000, earthquakes were once again recorded under Fuji. Japan's government assembled a committee of scientists to evaluate the risks and issue new guidance to 44 million people, basically asking what would happen if the 1707 eruption happened today. Anyone living within range of lava flows and pyroclastic flows would have to evacuate. That's about 750,000 people, and another 470,000 would need to evacuate due to heavy ashfall. A large eruption would drop nearly 2 centimeters of ash across much of Tokyo, and 16 centimeters on the city's southwestern edge. Ash would contaminate tap water and stick to electrical wires, causing widespread power and cell outages. Roads would be impassable, trains would become inoperable, and air travel would be impossible. Heavy ashfall would accumulate on rooftops and could even collapse buildings, with large ones particularly vulnerable. And after the eruption's end, the city would be left with the logistical nightmare of cleaning up about 500 million cubic meters of ash. If the eruption happened during the winter, it would melt the mountain's snowpack, generating mud flows that could reach some small cities. The 1707 eruption was one of Fuji's largest, so its next eruption will likely be much smaller. But Japan's experts still recommend that local governments find places to store ash, that power lines and railways be improved to function during ashfall, and that residents keep emergency supplies on hand: food, water, goggles, and dust masks. No one knows when the world's most iconic volcano will erupt again, how many people will be living in its shadow when it does, or how many will have to leave. But what is clear, from Fuji's last eruption, from Sakurajima's daily explosions, from buried buildings and bird islands, and even from the largest eruption of the last 10,000 years, is that they won't be gone for long.